Everyone loves the idea of starting. Very few respect the discipline of staying. Starting is loud. Staying is silent. Starting gets applause. Staying gets ignored. But greatness doesn't live in the moment you begin. It lives in the moment you refuse to walk away. Quitting is rarely about the body. The body can handle far more than the mind is willing to allow. Muscles don't give up first. Lungs don't surrender on their own. It's the voice in the head that taps out long before the body reaches its true limit. That voice looks for comfort, for justification, for a reason to stop that sounds intelligent enough to accept. And the more you listen to it, the stronger it becomes. Quitting starts as a thought, not an action. Most people believe limits are physical. They believe they're tired because the body says so. They believe they're done because the pain feels real. But pain is just information. Fatigue is just feedback. Neither one carries authority unless you give it permission. The mind is the one that interprets sensation and decides whether it's danger or growth. Weakness begins when the mind confuses discomfort with damage. Every quitter tells themselves a story. The story sounds logical. The timing isn't right. The opportunity isn't fair. The effort isn't paying off. The environment isn't supportive. These stories repeat so often that they feel true, but they're habits, not facts. Mental habits built through avoidance, comfort, and inconsistency. Once quitting becomes familiar, it becomes the default response to resistance. The dangerous part is that quitting doesn't always look dramatic. It doesn't always mean walking away completely. Sometimes it's skipping reps. Sometimes it's lowering standards. Sometimes it's showing up physically, but checking out mentally. That's still quitting. The mind learns that pressure can be escaped, and once it learns that lesson, it applies it everywhere. Strong people understand that limits are movable. They don't assume the first signal means stop. They treat it as noise. They stay present inside the discomfort instead of running from it. They know the mind panics before the body breaks. They know the mind exaggerates pain to protect comfort, so they train their mind the same way they train their body, through controlled exposure to stress. Mental strength isn't built by motivation. Motivation is emotional, and emotions are unreliable. Mental strength is built by repetition under pressure, by finishing what you start even when the excitement is gone, by staying in situations that test patience, pride, and ego. Every time you resist the urge to quit, you weaken the quitting habit. Every time you push past the mental wall, that wall moves further back. Most people never find their real limit because they stop at the first argument their mind presents. The mind says this is enough. The mind says this is too much. The mind says tomorrow will be better. But tomorrow never changes anything. If today keeps ending early, strength is learning to question that voice instead of obeying it. Asking whether the pain is actually dangerous or just unfamiliar. There's a difference between injury and discomfort, but the mind blurs that line to escape effort. It labels effort as harm. It labels struggle as failure. That's why weak people protect themselves from growth while calling it self-awareness. Strong people accept that growth feels aggressive. It challenges identity. It exposes weakness. It forces confrontation with self-imposed limits. Quitting is practiced long before it shows up in big moments. It's practiced in small decisions, sleeping in when discipline is required, stopping early because no one is watching, choosing comfort because effort feels optional. These small exits train the brain to avoid stress. Over time, the mind becomes allergic to pressure. Then when real adversity arrives, quitting feels natural. Mental toughness is about control. Control over reactions, control over attention, control over standards. The body follows commands when the mind is clear. But a chaotic mind creates a weak body. Doubt tightens muscles. Fear drains energy. Excuses reduce output. The mind shapes performance before the body ever moves. Strong people build rituals to remove negotiation. They don't ask themselves how they feel. They already decided what they do. Decision fatigue is eliminated. Standards replace emotions. When quitting isn't an option, the mind stops searching. G for exits and starts finding solutions. Pain becomes different when quitting is removed from the equation. It becomes something to manage, not something to escape. The mind shifts from panic to problem solving. Breathing steadies. Focus sharpens. The body performs because the mind isn't sabotaging it with doubt. Weak people wait for confidence before they act. Strong people act until confidence shows up. Confidence isn't a prerequisite, it's a byproduct. It comes from proof. Proof that you can stay when it's hard. Proof that the voice telling you to quit doesn't control you. Each time you stay, that proof stacks. Each time you quit, doubt multiplies. The mind remembers what you do under pressure. It keeps score. If you quit often, it expects quitting next time. If you stay often, it expects resilience. Identity is built from repeated behavior, not intentions. You don't become strong by thinking strong thoughts. You become strong by surviving moments you once believed would break you. There will always be reasons to stop, always a justification that makes sense. The difference is whether you treat those reasons as commands or background noise. Strong people let the noise exist without obeying it. They understand that mastery requires discomfort to become familiar. When quitting is no longer your instinct, fear loses power. Challenges stop feeling threatening. Pressure becomes normal. You stop asking whether you can handle it and start assuming that you will. Not because it's easy, but because you've trained your mind to stay where others leave. The body adapts quickly. The mind resists change longer. That's why most limits are mental. And once the mind is trained to endure, the body follows without argument. Motivation is loud in the beginning. It shows up when the idea is fresh, when the vision feels exciting, when the future looks clean and rewarding. Motivation feeds on novelty. It thrives on emotion. That's why everyone feels powerful on day one. Everyone feels unstoppable at the start. But motivation is temporary, and it always leaves. Not because you're weak, but because that's its nature. The real test begins the moment motivation disappears. That moment confuses most people. They think something is wrong. They think they've lost passion. They think the dream isn't meant for them anymore. In reality, they've just reached the point where emotion hands control over to discipline. This is where paths split. One group slows down, waits, looks for inspiration. The other group keeps moving without asking how they feel. Staying when motivation dies is uncomfortable because there's no emotional fuel, no excitement, no rush, just routine, pressure, and repetition. The work feels heavier even though it hasn't changed. The difference is that the mind is no longer entertained. It wants stimulation. It wants a reason to feel good. When it doesn't get one, it starts questioning the process. That's where most people quit. They don't quit because they can do the work. They quit because the work stopped making them feel something. They were addicted to the emotion, not committed to the standard. Once the emotion disappears, they interpret that emptiness as failure instead of transition. Strong people understand this phase. They expect it. They don't panic when motivation fades because they never plan to rely on it. They operate from structure, from habits built during the motivated phase, but designed to survive without it. They know motivation is unreliable, so they replace it with rules. Rules don't care how you feel. When motivation is gone, excuses get louder. The mind becomes creative. It starts negotiating. Just take today off. Just do less. You've already worked hard. You deserve rest. These thoughts don't sound weak. They sound reasonable. That's why they're dangerous. Weakness rarely announces itself honestly. Staying requires emotional control. Not suppressing emotions, but refusing to let them dictate behavior. You can feel tired and still train. You can feel bored and still work. You can feel uninspired and still execute. Strength isn't the absence of negative emotion. Strength is movement despite it. Most people think discipline is extreme. In reality, discipline is simple. It's deciding once and removing daily debate. When motivation dies, discipline takes over like autopilot. You don't need to feel ready. You just need to start. Action often recreates motivation, but strong people don't wait for that reward. They work even if it never comes. Staying also exposes ego. When motivation fades, progress often slows. Results don't show up fast. Recognition disappears. That's when ego gets uncomfortable. It wants validation. It wants proof that the effort matters. Weak people need constant reassurance to continue. Strong people generate internal approval through consistency. They don't need applause to stay locked in. Staying is lonely. When motivation dies, crowds disappear. Fewer people relate to what you're doing. Conversations change. Energy around you shifts. You're no longer part of something exciting. You're part of something demanding. That isolation pushes people away from the process. They confuse loneliness with wrong direction. Strong people see loneliness as confirmation. When motivation is gone, The mind looks for shortcuts. It wants efficiency without effort, progress without pain. This is where standards slip. Form breaks, focus fades, effort becomes selective. Staying means protecting standards even when nobody would notice if you didn't, especially when nobody would notice. That's where character is built. Weak people are consistent when it feels good. Strong people are consistent when it feels pointless. They understand that consistency isn't measured over days of excitement, but over weeks of boredom. They don't need every session to feel powerful. They just need it to be done. Staying trains trust in yourself. Every time motivation dies and you keep going, you prove something important. You prove that your word matters. You prove that you're not dependent on mood. Over time, that trust compounds. You stop questioning whether you'll show up. You already know the answer. Motivation creates starters. Staying creates finishers. Pressure feels different when motivation is gone. There's no emotional cushion. Every rep feels heavier. Every hour feels longer. But this is where mental endurance grows. This is where tolerance expands. This is where what once felt impossible becomes normal. Strong people don't romanticize this phase. They don't enjoy it. They respect it. They know it's necessary. They know it strips away illusions and reveals who's serious. Motivation hides weakness. Staying exposes it and forces growth. Most people never reach their potential because they leave when motivation leaves. They assume the fire is gone forever. They don't realize discipline is a quieter, stronger fuel. It doesn't burn bright, but it burns long. When you stay long enough, motivation sometimes returns, but it's different. It's calmer, sharper, less emotional, more controlled, and even if it doesn't return, the work still gets done. Staying rewires identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries. You become someone who finishes, someone who doesn't need perfect conditions, someone who performs on schedule, not on feeling. That's the difference between talent and toughness. Talent shows up when inspired. Toughness shows up regardless. When motivatio end dies, the weak look for a way out. The strong lock in deeper, adjust, and continue. Knowing this phase is not an obstacle, but the requirement discipline is not loud. It doesn't hype you up. It doesn't care how you feel when you wake up. It doesn't negotiate with your emotions or wait for the perfect moment. Discipline is quiet, repetitive, and unforgiving. That's why it lasts longer than pain, excuses, and doubt. Pain screams, excuses argue, doubt whispers, but discipline doesn't speak at all. It just acts. Pain is temporary by nature. It rises, peaks, and fades. But when you're inside it, the mind lies and tells you it will last forever. It magnifies discomfort and shrinks perspective. Pain wants attention. It wants you to react. Most people obey it instantly, not because the pain is unbearable, but because they've never trained themselves to stay calm inside it. Discipline doesn't try to eliminate pain, it expects it. When pain arrives, discipline doesn't panic because it was already part of the plan. Excuses are more dangerous than pain. Pain is honest. Excuses are deceptive. They sound intelligent. They sound responsible. They disguise fear as logic. The mind creates excuses to protect comfort, and it does it smoothly. Too tired, too busy, too late, too early, not ready, already tried. All excuses have one thing in common. They remove responsibility while preserving self-image. Discipline doesn't argue with excuses. It ignores them. It doesn't need to win debates in your head. It already decided what happens next. That's why disciplined people move faster. They waste no energy negotiating with themselves. While others are stuck thinking, disciplined people are already working. Doubt is quieter but deeper. It questions identity. It asks whether you're capable, whether you belong, whether the effort is worth it. Doubt doesn't stop action directly. It weakens consistency. It chips away at confidence until quitting feels justified. Most people wait for doubt to disappear before they move. Discipline moves while doubt is present. Discipline doesn't require belief. It creates belief through action. When pain hits, discipline controls response. When excuses appear, discipline blocks exits. When doubt creeps in, discipline keeps the routine intact. This is why discipline outlasts everything else. Pain fades. Excuses change shape. Doubt comes and goes. Discipline remains because it's built on structure, not emotion. Weak people depend on feelings. Strong people depend on systems. Discipline is built through small decisions made consistently under pressure. It's choosing standards over convenience. It's doing what needs to be done even when no one will notice if you don't, especially when no one will notice. Discipline trains the nervous system to stay stable in chaos. It teaches the mind that discomfort is not an emergency. Most people misunderstand discipline. They think it's extreme, they think it's punishment. In reality, discipline is freedom from mood, freedom from overthinking, freedom from self-doubt. When discipline is in place, you don't have to wonder whether you'll show up. You already know. Pain tests tolerance. Discipline expands it. The body adapts to stress quickly. The mind resists longer. Discipline forces the mind to catch up. At first, discipline feels heavy. It feels restrictive. But over time, it becomes automatic. What once required effort becomes identity. You stop forcing yourself. You just do. Excuses lose power when discipline is consistent. The mind learns that excuses don't change outcomes. It stops offering them. Doubt weakens when discipline keeps producing evidence. Every completed task becomes proof. Every finished session becomes reinforcement. Confidence stops being something you look for and becomes something you stand on. Discipline doesn't make you immune to pain. It makes you functional inside it. There will be days when pain is sharp, when effort feels aggressive, when fatigue clouds focus. Discipline doesn't remove those days, it carries you through them. It simplifies decisions to one question: what's required right now? That simplicity is powerful. Complexity breeds hesitation. Discipline removes hesitation. Weak people chase motivation to escape pain. Strong people use discipline to walk through it. Discipline also protects you from yourself, from overconfidence when things are going well, from panic when things go wrong. It keeps output steady, regardless of circumstance.